was inordinately fat. He brought to mind the more bloated of the corpses Hutchinson had seen in the morgue the day before. But the living man's smile was broader, his skin not as gray. His bow was deeper than Hutchinson thought his girth would allow. The quayabera the man wore was huge and simply embroidered. Beneath its sleeve, Hutchinson noticed a gold Seiko watch that crimped the flesh of the wrist. "Mr. Hutchinson?" the man said. His voice was light and surprisingly gentle. Hutchinson nodded, and the man went on in Spanish. "May I speak with you for a moment? In private?" Hutchinson turned to the young man from the embassy and to the younger uniformed soldier and motioned them ahead. "There is someone you seek here," the man said to Hutchinson when they were alone. "Yes." "He is a relative?" "Numbered the relative of a—" Hutchinson used the English word, "a constituent." "Please?" "Someone in my district," he explained, and the man nodded. "Locke," the man said. "Thomas Locke, yes." "You know that he is dead." "I had heard that. You wish his body?" "His family does." "I can get Mr. Locke's body for you." Hutchinson looked at the man for a moment before speaking again. "Are you certain, please, that it's him?" The man reached into a pocket and pulled out a small parcel wrapped in brown paper and twine. It was the size of a thick paperback book. "Take this. You will see. Then come and meet me." The man gave Hutchinson the directions and told him how much money to bring. "Come alone," the man said. "Alone? You will not be harmed." The man turned and walked away. Hutchinson rejoined the young diplomat and the soldier and went back to the hotel. Together, he and the diplomat went to his room, where Hutchinson unwrapped the small package. Inside was a plastic bag which contained a bloodless, nearly white piece of a human hand, the little and ring fingers still attached. The diplomat turned ashen. Hutchinson's face did not change. From his briefcase, Hutchinson drew a sheet of shiny paper divided into 10 squares. In the center of each was a single fingerprint. He manipulated the piece of hand in the plastic bag until the 2 fingertips were outside, past the Ziploc seal. Hutchinson lifted the hand close to his eyes, and the young diplomat looked away. "They look the same," Hutchinson said at last. "They'd be a mirror image," the diplomat said. "Yes, even so. I don't have a pad, an ink pad, but they look the same. First 2 fingers left hand. We'll send someone with you." He told me to come alone. "They don't expect you to. They just say that. Number I have to. You can't be alone here." The diplomat paused. "It isn't safe." "It's not that far," Hutchinson said. That night, Hutchinson and the diplomat met for dinner in the hotel restaurant. The last time Hutchinson had been there, 2 years before, the table at which he sat had commanded a view of the street and the courtyard beyond. Now the glass was missing, and plywood planks hid the outside from view. The diplomat sipped a Tom Collins. "It didn't bother you much, did it?" "What?" "The fingers, that hand." "I've seen as much before," Hutchinson said, draining his scotch and softly crunching a pearl of ice. "You in Vietnam?" Hutchinson nodded. "You?" "Number 4. F. Lucky." "I don't know. It's become a status symbol now to have been there." The diplomat sipped again. "Maybe so. I guess it got me elected." The diplomat shook his head. "Christ, these people. I think I've been here too long. All I can see is the sickness, selling a body." "Capitalism," Hutchinson said. "That's what we're trying to protect. Seems to be flourishing. That's all that fat man is, a good capitalist. Sometimes you don't sound like a congressman. Goods and services? Supply and demand? I sound just like a congressman, I've studied, done my homework." There was a grim humor in Hutchinson's smile. "This country," he said, "is undoubtedly full of shit. But it doesn't bother you. Numberline told you it doesn't." The next day, Hutchinson drove to where the man had said he would meet him. It was a mile outside of the city, down a side road of dirt to a small village. Hutchinson saw women and naked children, and very few men. Some soldiers with rifles sat beneath trees, scarcely looking up as he drove past. He stopped, as directed, outside the only brick building in the village. The man he had spoken to the day before came out of the door and walked to the car, his hand extended. Hutchinson took it. It was cool and dry. "You have brought the money?" the man asked. Hutchinson nodded. "Son, drive your car behind the building. There's a shed there. See, where I go." The man walked around the side of the brick building, and Hutchinson followed in his car. A one-story shed roofed with corrugated metal stood in the shade of trees at the jungle's edge. Long grass grew around it, nearly hiding it from sight. Hutchinson brought the car as close as he could without miring it in the tall fronds. "Come," the man said, and passed through the door. Inside, a refrigeration unit throbbed hollowly, and Hutchinson saw cases of canned goods with American labels. He could see his own breath and the larger, denser clouds from the man who led him. The man stopped by a covered form and pulled back a canvas tarpaulin. "This is Thomas Locke," he said. The body had been dismembered. Hutchinson looked at the left hand first, saw the thumb and 2 remaining fingers, and felt certain the piece in the hotel's freezer would match. The face, empty and expressionless, resembled his photographs of Thomas Locke. As for the other pieces, the torso still joined to the upper right arm and thighs, the right forearm and hand, and the 2 disjointed feet and lower legs, he was not sure. But then he remembered. "The left foot," he said, pointing to it. "Yes? It is not Thomas Locke's." "It is not?" The man's florid face shone with innocence, and he knelt by the gray-green, broken-toed appendage. Number Locke walked with a limp. He had no left foot. It was artificial. He used a cane. "Ah." The man nodded, eyeing the foot critically. "Well?" Then he looked up and smiled. "Is death not wonderful here? We can make lame men whole, as is Mr. Locke before his God." The smile faded. "You will pay me still?" "Yes." "That is fine then. For enough money, we can find wings and make Mr. Locke an angel." The man straightened up. "I will have my friends put the body in your car." "Not the foot," Hutchinson said. "No," the man agreed. "Not the foot." After the pieces were wrapped in canvas and placed in Hutchinson's trunk, he paid the man, and they left the shed. In the doorway, Hutchinson paused and looked back to where the foot still lay on the stone floor, flanked by the brown cardboard boxes of canned goods. The soldiers did not look up as Hutchinson drove out of the village, back to the city. That night in the hotel, Hutchinson prepared for bed. When it came time to remove his socks, he sat on the bed as always and started to roll the left sock over his ankle. Then he stopped for a moment. When he continued, he moved more slowly, deliberately. He let the sock drop quietly onto the carpet and looked at his bare foot, gently touching the toes, kneading the sole, as if inspecting a piece of fruit in the marketplace. Then he quickly turned off the light and finished undressing in the dark. As the night lengthened, his feet grew large, unwieldy, until they were thick slabs of meat, heavy stones that became no lighter when he flung back the sheet and lay naked, pooled in sweat. When morning came, they were immovable. He waited, breathing deeply for them to come back to life. Eventually they did, allowing him to walk unsteadily into the bathroom. By the time he breakfasted, they felt fine, though he did not forget what they had become in the night. 2 days later, he was home in the Georgetown apartment he shared with his wife. She made them an excellent dinner, and afterward they went to bed and made love. Sometime before dawn, she was awakened by the sound of his ragged breathing. "What's wrong?" she whispered, thinking of bad dreams and turning on the light to banish them. Hutchinson lay on his back, shiny with sweat, his head pressed into the pillow, his jaw jutting ceilingward. "My foot's asleep," he said through clenched teeth. "Does it hurt?" she asked him, wondering at the tears in his eyes, thinking how out of place they seemed there, then realizing that she had never seen him cry, not even at their daughter's funeral.